Alright guys, welcome to another trade recap video. This is going to be a video going over the last 3 trades I've taken over the last few days. I haven't really been trading too much over the last week and a half. I have been out of town for a good portion of that, and then plus I've been very hands-off, not too aggressive, and been very picky in taking my trades since the market's a little shaky right now. So I did end up still taking 3 trades this week so far, or I think 4, but I'm gonna go over 3 of them. And 2 of them were alerted in the Discord, 1 was not. And I'm gonna go through the one that wasn't because it was a super clean trade, exactly what I was looking for, exactly my game plan going in today, right? I alerted this yesterday saying this is exactly what I was watching. So this is everything that has, everything's on the internet, everything I posted. So I'm gonna go through that one first, which is the one I did not end up alerting, which is probably the best trade I've taken over those last 3, right? Over the last 3 trades, which is unfortunate. But I'm gonna go through that one, and I'm gonna go through my other 2, right? 1 loss and 1 win on the other 2. So the first trade that I did end up taking today, right, on Wednesday, was MRK. This is the one I did not end up alerting. And what I was watching here on MRK, right? So basically, we have been just been moving and grinding higher over the last month, 2 months, 3 months, right? Since back in November. So what is that, 3 months? And every single time we've had a consolidation breakout, right, or a flag breakout, we just continue to grind higher. And so this is just basically what I was doing, right? So we recently broke out, a couple weeks ago, and made an insane move over the next 5 days. And then again today, right, we're starting to already break out again on a smaller flag, right? It is a little bit smaller than this, this kind of consolidation here, this base, but still a really clean setup. And what I was watching today was a 118 retest, right? So typically, right, as you all know, I like taking breakouts. That is my go-to. That's my thing, right? Breakouts. But you have to be able to adapt and adjust when breakouts aren't really working right now, right? So breakouts over the last few months have not been super clean or have not worked. So I'm adjusting to what is working, right? So what's working are the undercuts of key moving averages or key levels, and a retest, right? Retests are working as well. So that is exactly what I did here, was take a retest of 118, right? And you can see it was exactly at that 118 spot, exactly what I had marked off, which was this previous high here and another key level back here. I took it at the 118 mark, literally within 10 minutes of the open, and I was targeting this 119 spot, and I'm still targeting way up here at 121. So I'm waiting for my second take profit point to hit at 121. I'll show you exactly intraday what I did, or when I took it. So you can see here, first 10 minutes, a lot of we opened up red, right? So we had we closed at 119, we opened up around 118. So a small, small down day, or down open, right, where we opened up around 118. We came down exactly at that 118 spot and had 2 5-minute candles showing wicks at that spot, right? So we had wick here on that first 5-minute candle, and then another wick here. Not too crazy, but enough to show me that, okay, this is a good spot, a good risk reward spot to enter this trade. So I ended up taking it on that after that second 5-minute candle. So within 10 minutes within the open, ended up taking it there with a small, literally a small risk, right? I mean, this stop loss would have been at low day, right? So you could have put it down here, would have been a tiny loss, especially with the options that I ended up taking, which were the marches, right? The reason I did not end up alerting it was because the options were a little bit wide on the spread, and I was not super confident in taking something like that. But I ended up getting filled pretty quickly, right? So I ended up getting filled, let me see. So I ended up getting filled around 1.65. I'm pretty sure when I was watching the spreads, they were at 1.85 and 1.4. So $40 spreads are pretty crazy for me. And I just put it right in the middle. Ended up getting filled pretty quickly, right? That kind of surprised me already, but ended up doing that, right? Getting filled pretty lightly on that 1.65 spot. And I ended up taking it there and then putting my stop losses here. And so far, right, we're ended up ripping, right? Didn't really move much for the first, 30 minutes. We moved up. Options didn't really move that much. Came back down. I mean, the options didn't really start moving until an hour later, when it started really ripping here. That's when the options really started getting movement. I guess that's because a lot more people were starting to buy it. There was a lot more volume on it. When I bought it, it was not, I think it had under 30 contracts bought that so far, or something like that. It might have been 20. Anyways, ended up taking that, and we're up, I think, let me see, 31%. So I'm up 31% so far. Obviously I've trimmed along the way. I trimmed on the pre-market high here at around 119, right? So I didn't trim here since the contracts were not moving. So I ended up, whenever the contracts started moving here around like 20% is when I started trimming, and now I'm up 31%, right? So the contracts are moving a little weird. The spreads keep moving, you know, wide to small, but I'm just gonna stay in it until, you know, I'm pretty light in this position, so I'm not really looking at exiting anytime soon, unless it's just something happens with the contracts, right? And then it just comes back down. But I'm still in this position, super clean so far, exactly what I wanted, right? Next trade, so I'm gonna go through the 2 trades I've taken in the Discord. First trade I'll go through is AMD. So I did take AMD yesterday. Let me see. Okay, so I added AMD yesterday, 227, 200 puts at 4.3. So I ended up taking a put position and put my stop loss at 218, right? And then literally 5 minutes later at 20%, and then 30 minutes later, down or trimmed at 30%. I trimmed half, and I let my stop loss, or I put my stop losses at break even, right? Literally what I do every single time. And then I got out of this position this morning, and I'll show you exactly why, right? Everything ended up playing out exactly, and it actually ended up, you know, I think breaking down even more today. Yeah, so where I entered yesterday was off this 15-minute. I was actually watching this going into yesterday, right? Going into yesterday, I was watching this because of this rejection at this gap level here, right? We have a huge gap on AMD, but since the tech sector is super, you know, the NASDAQ is just super weak, this is something I was watching to the downside, since this is one of the weaker stocks, right? We had low volume on that pullback to the moving averages here, volume decreasing, showing no signs of buying whatsoever, and we had a rejection here right at that 9 EMA, right? That was kind of what I was watching, and I wanted to typically watch this below 213, but I got an entry pretty quick and pretty early before that 213 break on this 15-minute rejection, right? We rejected that gap level again, right? Just like we did the prior day. And I ended up taking it because this 15-minute was pretty ugly, right? So I ended up taking a quick entry on these. I'm pretty sure it was around, what was it? I think 9:10. So within like 30, you know, what is that? 45 minutes into the open. So 15. So I guess like during this candle here, I ended up taking it, and the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes, it ended up dropping crazy, right? Ended up taking 30%, put my stop loss at break even, and I ended up holding it the rest of the day, right? So I ended up holding it and never hit my break even whatsoever. It never did. It got close here on this pullback, never hit it though. And it came back down, and it just kind of closed right around, I think 20%, I think is where it closed at, 20 or 17% on my remaining position. And then today, once again, we gapped up, and unfortunately it ended up hitting my break evens here, right? So I think it ended up closing me out, or I had to cancel my break-even stops and then close it down like 5%, right? So I closed the rest of my position, which was half of it, for minus 5%. So overall, a 25% winner, technically, since I had trimmed half at 30%. But so, yeah, technically, right, I'm still green on this trade. And then what do you know, right? Obviously, all I did was just, I could have re-entered it. I should have, forgot about it, but ended up rejecting it. Exact same movement as yesterday. Just rejecting 218, and then ends up selling off. And this is exactly what I wanted yesterday, obviously, but it happens, right? And I'll show you the next trade. It's even worse, right? I had another trade that just did exactly this, but it did end up, you know, stopping me out, unfortunately. Wish I would have had a little bit more wiggle room on that, but yeah, so this would be up, I think, 50% at this point, but it happens, right? It's just the gap ups and stuff like that ends up screwing you over sometimes. But let me go through another trade. So I had QQQ puts, which actually was one of my biggest losses of the year, right? I had a big loss on this. I think it was a 30% loss. So I haven't had a 30% loss in a while. And I'll show you the exact position here. So I added on Monday, or 210. So I think that's Monday, 220, 600 puts, right? This is the first time I've taken a index stock or ETF this year. So this is the first time I've done that, and I took 220, 600 puts at $4 or 4.0 per contract for a small size, right? It was rejecting the 50 EMA, similar to what is happening now. You can see it's rejecting pretty hard now, but similar to AMD, right? We just basically had a declining volume on this move up, rejecting the 50, and all I was looking for was, I mean, we had a very low risk, right? The stop loss would have been, I think, at high of day here, or whenever I ended up taking it. I'll look at it again on the charts, but ended up taking it very small risk, and I was targeting all the way back down here, right? I wanted to see this low get hit again, right? That's kind of what I was targeting, and then yeah, so that's why I ended up taking it. That was the reasoning, right? My stop loss was a daily close. Okay, here we go. So my stop loss is a daily close above the 90 EMA, right? So you can see the 90 EMA is this black line. If we would have I ended up taking this around like 1 o'clock, I think. So 1:55, so 2 o'clock with an hour left. So if the last hour of the market ended up ripping and closing above the 90 EMA, I would have stopped that out. That's what would have happened. But we ended up selling off the rest of the day, and then it closed pretty red. So that was a really good close on the market. And then I saw I had a nice 12% move on the options. I reduced my position just because I was a little hesitant in taking some heavy size. I was in it pretty heavy, so I wanted to end up reducing it a little bit to go like half my position, right? And then the next day I stopped out at minus 30%. So I got unfortunate, or I got screwed over with it going minus 30% just for it to dump. But yeah, so I ended up taking it on Monday here at around 155. So I think it was like one of these candles, and it ends up selling off the rest of the day. Perfect sell off. And then we had huge news, I guess, apparently with unemployment rate and all that stuff came out, ripped in the pre-market, ends up getting over that stop loss, right, which was 617, right? That was that previous high day. So actually it was more like here, since it was like a daily closure, or like a closure of a candle. Ends up getting over it, stopping out for 30%. If this thing would have been like 15-20%, I would end up holding it. But 30% is kind of like my max loss I want to hit. I don't like hitting stop losses at 30% unless I'm in like a lotto trade, which is rare. But yeah, it ends up stopping out in just the next hour, dumping, right? Exactly what I wanted to see. Unfortunate that we had that gap up, and then again today, right, we gapped up again and did the exact same thing. Now we're selling off even harder. So this position is probably up like 60-70% at this point. I think the contracts are like from $4 to like $8 a contract at this point, something crazy. But yeah, so unfortunate type of trading over the last few weeks, or last few days. Even though I had a good little winner on MRK so far, the last two trades were just, you know, a 20% win, or a 25% win on AMD, and a 30% loss on Qs. Unfortunate, even though it ended up playing out exactly how I wanted it to. This is probably going to come down at this point, this 595, exactly my target. So